Well, firstly, I want to thank you deeply for having this meeting with us. It's such a pleasure to meet you because we've been learning many things about Ikigai, and you were such a diverging point, you know, and a specific point in the history of westernized the Ikigai philosophy. It was such a
Yeah,
thing.
I'm a little embarrassed about it, but considering the actual effort that went in.
Yeah, but it made you famous, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, in this world of Ikigai, which is yeah, no, it is an interesting claim to fame, but yeah, in certain quarters of this strange world that is growing exponentially, that it
Yes.
appears. I mean, look at the fact that you're using it as another example of, I get these messages all of the time. There's people who've written books that gone to millions of people, and it's appearing in university courses and all sorts of things, and it's just like, that's very strange, and it keeps building and building, building, and I'm like, well, it's not really kind of Ikigai. I just took a word and
It was, but tell me, firstly, I want to know a little bit more about you. We know you've been in the coaching business. How is it life for you? Did it start?
I suppose, yeah, I mean, I grew up in a relatively wealthy family, in a tax haven in an island jurisdiction, but I also, when my dad came from a kind of poor background, based in the UK, left school at 14, dyslexic, entrepreneur, made something of himself, but also spent a lot of time in Africa as well. So we had this kind of very interesting experience growing up, which is, someone's come from nothing, but also has all of these resources and wealth, but also working in a place where you could see there was nothing. And all I remember was this profound joy in places like Africa with people who had nothing, and this kind of difficulty with life that with people with lots of resources had in the West. So I really, that narrative of, get a good education, and make a lot of money. I was in the system with someone with no education was making more money, and then the question is, did it make people happy anyway? And so I kind of went through education really questioning, and really the whole world didn't make sense at an intuitive level, at a deep level. And I built a business in my 20s. I had a couple of, so I mean, I kind of just did enough to get through school, and I did degrees and things like that. But I was always doing the least amount of work possible. I was never a high achiever. I was a high. I was. I mean, my achievement was the tiny amount of work I've always done to achieve anything. That is mastery. That it was never about effort. And then, I built a business in my 20s. My brother, again, he worked far harder than me, and we ended up failing enough to make it successful. And we sold that in 2008. But I had a couple of nervous breakdowns during those 10 years and things like that. It was really misaligned for me. Learned a lot, but there was something off. It didn't really fill my soul and things like that. And then after we sold in 2008, I got really passionate about mentoring entrepreneurs and coaching and mentoring entrepreneurs. And really my specialism became about supporting entrepreneurs to design businesses that are aligned with their life. And what you see in entrepreneurship in particular is that people become slaves to businesses, rather than the whole point of having your own business is so that it can become a slave to you, right? And so I really got into the story of how do you work creatively with entrepreneurs and things like that to build organizations that create thriving owners and thriving entrepreneurs, and really to sit in the question of, well, if you're not building it to create a great life for yourself, what's the point? And at the time, I set up a blog, and I had this thing where I'm just going to write something to reflect on my own learning, and just, you know, blog along the way. I didn't really think about it, and you know, every week if you go to my blog, you'll see hundreds of blog posts and things like that. And then one time I kind of wrote this blog on Ikigai, which I think a diagram I'd seen in the book, which it had taken off a Spanish book, really obscure Spanish book, which was a diagram of purpose. And I was also researching blue zones and life expectancy, and had this Japanese concept of Ikigai, which is the reason for being, that they talked about the Okinawans, where they have this sense of essence of a reason to get out of bed in the morning. And I simply just joined two dots with this kind of this Western perspective of the Venn diagram on purpose with this essence of Japanese concept. Change one word, posted the blog like I do every other week. I did every other week at the time, and thought, yeah, nothing of it. And you know, I think after time, the odd email would drop into my inbox, and the diagram would start appearing, and it just somehow, that diagram captivated people in a way that you know, became a meme, and a meme that has kept going, kept expanding. I mean, it's really interesting because just seeing that framework has the capacity to fundamentally alter the direction of a person's life. That's a powerful meme, because they can instantly look at it and go, I'm not living in alignment now. And some people, that is an instant wow, an instant transformational moment. And so, you know, from my role, and it wasn't really my diagram that created anything. It was some nice Spanish guy in an obscure book somewhere, but it was something in the mystery of using a Japanese concept and fusing the two that made it memeable. But really, it was only 45 minutes of my time to do the post, and a journey of, you know, hundreds of weeks of exploring purpose and meaning, when you know, in the essence, I've had decades where I felt devoid of it. So I became curious to what is the path of the soul's existence, right? And doing stuff that really has no meaning was really difficult. And you know, I'd broken enough to explore that and support others in that process, and in that journey of, I don't know how old I was when I wrote the book, 40 years maybe. It allowed me to write something in 45 minutes that I didn't think too much about, that turned into a worldwide phenomenon in some way.
But I think it's an amazing story, because sometimes life happens just like that, you know. Just I was curious, and then I saw two concepts that were really nice, and Japanese culture is awesome. I'm sorry about the noise. Japanese culture it's amazing, and some mysterious guy did some mysterious diagram that made a lot of sense. When I heard about your story, I was like, this is such an relatable accident. Actually, I've never been viral. I'm sorry, I cannot relate to that part, but I've been using you know, merging concepts, and I think that makes a lot of sense. How was it for you to your line of thought behind merging the two concepts? What was it that made you the aha moment, and etc.?
I don't know. I mean, those kind of transcendent moments of consciousness, I suppose, where something will arrive to you. I mean, if you kind of, because I've thought about this, right? You know, because I've been asked this question before, and I'm like, well, I didn't really, you know, it just arrived in a moment of inspiration. I think this is, you know, for me, those moments when I'm walking on the beach, or actually, you know, sometimes when I'm hungover the next day and I'm not thinking too much, you know, an idea will come, or you're in an interesting and inspiring conversation with people from a different point, and suddenly a dot will join. You know, I think, you know, if you look at the brainwave states associated with eureka moments and aha moments and dot joining moments. They're actually, you know, I think it's I don't know whether it's gamma waves or one of the waves that's quite different to the normal kind of alpha states and things like that, where it's like you downloading something from the field almost. And I think if they study creatives and things like that, they start to look into those brainwave states. So I would say, yeah, inspiration comes, you know, in a doing culture. So, you know, people are like hyper efficient on a day-to-day basis. But if you want to be hyper efficient on a decade by decade basis, it's the void that delivers the productivity, right? And so, so you know, that's why something like the 4-day week is so powerful, or why lockdown is creating an explosion of new businesses and entities, because effort is not where inspiration comes from. Inspiration comes from ease often, or it certainly does for me. And so, yeah, the kind of the narrative that I always try to get out there is if you think productivity is about hard work, you're missing the power of infinite creativity. And to understand where creativity comes from, it comes in these divine moments of inspiration that come from all of these things that you experience, but then creating the space for the magic to arrive. And you'll see many creatives kind of describe inspiration in the same way.
Marc, that's amazing. I think we have a lot of insights from here, like from this topic. And if you can connect the Ikigai diagram with your life, how is it for you? How do you see it connected? I want to see like your personal experience with Ikigai in your own life.
Yeah, I mean, in fairness, it's only really, you know, I've always had maybe 3 of the 4 diagrams and parts of the diagram in at any one time, and I found it a continually iterative process to kind of move in onto the journey of the soul, right? And so I think that there's the Indian phrase Dharma, which is also like Ikigai and purpose. But they say there's a link between karma and dharma, and so the way to describe that is the more you learn to accept yourself and your whole self over time, the more your purpose becomes clear. And I think, and so in working with so many people and working with me, it's now the money flow is really good again, the meaning's really good again, the purpose is really good, but it's only really recently where it's all joined together again. And I've had years where I've been off, where I felt off, and I've had years where I've made a lot of money, years where I've made a lot of impact. But now it's like, even for me, as supposedly the creator of the concept, it took 45 years to feel in that sweet spot of lining everything up. So don't think I'm like, just because I came up with the idea that I'm Mr. Perfect in this process. It is a continual evolution, and life shifts, because I had a family and that made it harder to be as free with some things, and then and so I had to rebuild and find how do I find Ikigai when I've got the chaos of raising 3 kids. Finding Ikigai was easier when I was free and could go around the world and do all this kind of thing, and so it's a constant evolutionary process, and for me it is, I mean, I'm a community builder. My real life, other than this 45-minute thing, is about community transformation, country transformation in small countries, and that gets me out of bed every day, because I'm really having coffee and joining the dots for connections and joining the dots for ideas, and I do that day in, day out. And if enough people do that within any community, you're building the mycelium, the social cohesion that is, and that's what is changing the world right now. It is connections, ideas, relationships, which no doubt your program, that is what it's all about, right? In terms of supporting entrepreneurs that way. And so, long may it continue. But I feel like I'm on my soul's path right now, but it hasn't always been that way.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. And when you mention about entrepreneurs and our mission at Yunus Youth, I think it's very powerful and very important because you are doing it in some ways too. You are empower entrepreneurs too to make their life easier and to connect themselves with other perspectives. So that's really important. And talking about entrepreneurs and creating business that you mentioned when you're talking about your journey. How is money connected to the Ikigai diagram for you? How is it like the Ikigai is about making money or not necessarily? So I want to listen a little about you on that.
I think, for me now, the world is, mostly operate free at the point of service, because that removes all the barriers. But I think as someone who has thousands and thousands of conversations with lots and lots of different people, entrepreneurs from all walks of life, the way I make money is through investing in those projects and through doing that. So I've allowed myself to feel free to connect all of the time, and place no barriers to connection, but realizing all of the wisdom I'm getting from that connection, I'm then reapplying into providing the nutrients for me to exist. And so I'm not necessarily managing people anymore or anything like that, but I'm inspiring and triggering, because I didn't like the people management side of that. But as the world is because it was too hierarchical for me, but as now the world is decentralizing and the way the money flows is decentralizing, then for someone like me who's works in a very network way, it's become even easier to create money flows and money cycles, because you need a lot less permission to receive it now. And so when you think like things like universal basic income and things like that are going to deploy around the world, then that is really the greatest tool for future entrepreneurship in the world, is money going from being hierarchical and permission based to the nutrients or the mycelium of the world being able to distribute to every single human and entrepreneur, and then they can build from that safety of both safety of money and also the safety of community around them, with the social capital as well. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. I think somewhat is inevitable, right? To talk about money in some point. But just something you said before that just came into my mind, because I thought it was so inspiring when you talked about creativity when being an entrepreneur. And we have all types of social entrepreneurs with all different backgrounds, such an amazing group of people. And we wanted to hear, well, firstly, the part I wanted to ask is, how can you be creative? And as you were saying, in this money world, and how to be creative when, as you said, we are nonstop, we are hyper do multitasking, and how can we be creative when we don't actually have much time? When we should we create more time to be relaxed, to be available for new ideas? How is it for you? What do you think?
Well, I mean, so in a world of infinite creativity, right? If you've not got much time, then you're not being creative enough, right? That's
That's a point. Yeah, that's
like,
I'm sorry,
if you're busy, you're failing in creativity, right? That's it. Because actually some of the most successful business builders fundamentally can create time. Like, unless if you're constantly going to the limit of time, it shows a lack of creativity, and it's not productive decade by decade. It's only productive day by day. And so ultimately, make your own problem the first act of creativity, which is how do you do more with less, and that less is spend less time on it, right? On the doing, and more time in the free time, which is the time where the inspiration comes. I know it's always a balance, but the point is, if you're just a busy fool the whole time and you're not creating space, you're not being creative, or you're not putting your creativity into your primary issue, which is your own well-being and your own life. And what's the point? It becomes, as you say, business slavery. If you're in that, sure, if you love it and all of that kind of stuff, and you couldn't get enough of it, and it's fueling your own creativity, that's fine. But it's very often not that way. It is this notion that entrepreneurship is a struggle story, and the struggle porn that goes around in that it is a race to beating yourself and things like that. That's just not true, and it shows a lack of creativity. And so I'm mischievous and playful, and say anyone that's busy consistently has some creativity challenges, and they need to spend more time meeting creative people that can help them, if they don't have it themselves, that can help release them from working too hard, because if they want to be more productive every decade, they've got to create space.
That was so intense. That was an aha moment for me. It was like, that's it. If you don't have enough time, you're not being creative enough.
Yeah. That's
wow,
linear. But I mean, it's a better iteration point than the default, which is work harder. Yeah. And no, it's not linear. There's a spectrum and all of that. But I just, as a provocation, it gets people to think in a different way.
Yeah, I'm absolutely shocked. I don't know. I was like, that's it. That's absolutely.
It's a challenge to the ego, right?
Yeah, I'm kind of shocked.
That statement kills high achievers, right?
Yeah, it did actually.
Like, suddenly now it becomes having free time as an act of achievement, right?
Yeah,
it's like, I've done this before, like checkmate.
Let me just write in my bullet journal to be more creative too. That's the
have more fun.
Yeah. That's it. To be relaxed. Yeah. But that's the point. How can overachievers but how can we develop it? Because as you said, we are constantly being creative, and it's an infinite amount of things to be new and to be worked on. But how can we slowly develop it? How can we at least start to see some changing points? You got it.
Yeah.
How can we develop it, basically?
So my response was, have you ever seen a 2-year-old that isn't creative?
Yeah. Okay.
Right. So it's not a process of learning; it's a process of unlearning. So before you became a high achiever, right, you could play and create, no problem. So the issue is remembering what it's like to be free.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we've all done this before, right? This is the thing. But we get layered on with the story of should and all of this conditioning that happens after that. And we basically teach ourselves out of what we're innate. So we're innately creative, we're innately playful. We do this. That's why, I mean, if you want to learn how to do it, just go and watch a kid, and then go back to being one. And as you may have noticed, I'm like a 5-year-old in adult form. Yeah, and it's understanding that we've just lost our way. That's all. And there's nothing to learn. It's about unlearning.
Yeah, that's also so insightful. It's just a lot of aha moments and just breaking points for me here. Yeah, just changing my perspective in many ways. But for me personally, I have a lot of trouble into continuously doing and maintaining the relaxed moments, and to being available for myself and to have fun and to be in the here and now, not so peacefully, but here, as you said, just to be available for life, to be creative, to be aware of things, and not just going through some feed in some social media. That's I guess that's difficultly.
Yeah, I mean, it's these are very be compassionate, right? For a start, it's like there's billions of neuroscience investment that goes into marketing you to do all this stuff, right? So it's like this whole teams of corporates and entrepreneurs that are designed to pull you off your free time, right? It's like the attention economy. It's like it's not a fair fight, right? So compassion is compassion and self-forgiveness is the place to start, to say, look, you're dealing with multi-billion-dollar organizations that are pulling you away from life because they're all wanting to take your time. Likewise, the story of you needing to be successful, all this kind of stuff, these are all the stuff that's marketed and pumped. And so, this inner freedom that comes with building and building is not easy to win. You have to learn self-sovereignty and understand that there's a huge subconscious manipulation process going around. So if you understand behavioral economics and behavioral science and all of these neuroscience and all of these things that all these tools and systems use, you've got to realize that you've got to learn the art of subconscious reprogramming, because you have had your subconscious, we all have had a subconscious hijack, some by design, some accidentally, some by culture. And we have to realize that 97% of what we do is automatic and subconscious. And so to start with compassion and to start with the process of becoming curious about changing the algorithms and going through that process of liberation, so that we can retain our time again and be autonomous again. But that isn't, but also recognizing that deep connection with other human beings, being in strong relationship is better than any Netflix channel. It's better than any social media channel. Vulnerability, human conversation, real conversation is better than any drug. It's just we've kind of forgotten how to do it because we're worried about rejection or all of these kind of things. And so yeah, I mean, it's a fun, it's a sticky process, a challenging journey to deprogram all of this stuff and to get into enjoying silence or enjoying connection. But there are some great traditions, great wisdom all around the world that's been doing this for thousands of years. So it's not hard. Everything's been done before. It's just honoring that the void of creativity is available to anyone, and it's just seeing it as a productivity thing probably is the most compassionate way to do it in the initial stage, in the initial thing.
Sorry.
Yeah, and the relationships, good well-being, space, ideas, these are all the things that makes you productive over a decade. And so it's just getting into the mindset of decade by decade productivity rather than day by day. And so our high achievers can suddenly start to make it feel more aligned with making it that way just by starting off with it being a productivity thing. Ultimately that passes as you deprogram that story, but it's a good place to start, is use the problem to create the solution.
Yeah, well, every time you say that, it's just touches one of my scars, and I lost track of time. I lost
this is more than I'm sorry. This is the rabbit hole, right? This is
yeah.
You kind of do it by asking. Every time someone presses a call, they enter the rabbit hole, and that's.
No, but now just remembered, because when you said about honoring traditions, obviously we wanted mainly talk to you about Ikigai, and then it's directly connected, everything we're saying now, to be available and to be aware and to make, not absolutely so extremely, but going not with the flow, with the masses, with the with the billion-dollar industries, all of them, and so I guess we could make the connection, how centenarians take their time to enjoy life and find their Ikigai so they can focus on other things, on the special things, on things that are meaningful to them, and not all the other part. And so they can go on, you know.
Yeah,
meaningfully.
you cannot rush your way to 100.
Yeah, absolutely not. Yeah.
I mean, it's like people who really live in that perpetual stress state of busy, you know, end up with chronic diseases, and you know, and it's like, it's not you. I mean, we live in an era where longevity is changing very quickly. So, but you know, people who live in that going with the flow, and it's a different flow. It's not the being pulled by everyone else. It's about your own flow. That can go with the river of life, right, which is their soul story and their meaning, and can be impervious to the noise. Then those guys, you know, live a longer time. And also recognizing that there's other Japanese concept in Okinawa called the moai, which is about the 5 group of
I absolutely love it. Yeah.
Lifelong friends. And so the biggest tip for entrepreneurship within this is don't do it alone. And I think this program is probably about a group of entrepreneurs going on a journey together, and building lifelong friendships, and understanding that shared vulnerability and shared connection and shared journey is the key to making this. And when I was an entrepreneur, people helped me along the way that had been the path 2 or 3 years before me, and it was great. And it's, you know, to do it as a journey of one or a hero's journey is ridiculous. To do it in tribe is, and in deep connection in the moai is the healthiest way to do it. And so recognizing that purpose and connection is key.
That's amazing, Mark. Oh my God, I'm like with a lot of insights from here, even from my life. So I'm just like, what should I do next, and what I'm going to do, and to relax more. So that's good that you are touching some points that are interesting for us too. And I want to ask you if you have an advice for our applicants for our Global Fellowship Program. All of them are social entrepreneurs and are trying to discover their Ikigai, their process in creating a business. So if you can have an advice for them, what it should be.
Well, they're all young, aren't they?
Yes.
So the best advice is you've got so much time, right? You know, like, why rush? You know, it's like, you know, you'll learn about who you are the more you savor life, right? And so if you're not there to taste it because you're too busy, you'll never find that meaning or purpose about what it means to you, right? And so, you know, it's like the wisdom of the old and the wisdom of the young. We somehow get lost in the middle, and yeah, it's realizing that the journey is far more important than this kind of destination of Ikigai. And actually, the Japanese concept truly is more about the beingness of the journey, and the Western diagram is more about the destination. And I think you start off with the Western concept of trying to get to the destination of filling all the things, but as you get older, you live in the Japanese concept, which is I'm just happy. And so I think, you know, the most important thing is if you're not happy along the way, the destination will never bring happiness. And so it's an illusion because it's an unquenchable thirst, because it'll be and then what, and then what, and then what. And so to be destination focused or achievement focused or end focused is, you know, it's kind of living by short-term dopamine hits. It's not living by this kind of long-term feeling of the joy of and the beauty of craft and getting up every day and doing something you love, right? And that is a journey-based process, not a destination-based process. And the culture that we grew up in, that is a revolution in in approach, right? And again, that's that process of unlearning. because a kid isn't worried about, you know, building a Lego block because they, you know, because they want to achieve something. It's just we're having fun building, right? You know, and if the more we build our organizations and our personal stories that way, the more wonder and magic arrives, and the better we can market our businesses, because people love places that are fun. The better employees we can have. Fundamentally, it has to be brilliant place to work, brilliant place to be, a brilliant story to be part of, all of these kind of things, and it has to be joyful, otherwise, and it's not regenerative, you know, and people have more and more choices, and so, you know, the story of sacrifice and suffering is becoming far less appealing over time as, as people have more choices, right? And so people want to work in places that are alive, and you know, you can have fun and make a good living and make a difference. And I forget the fourth one. Things you're good at, yeah. Very good.
Yeah, absolutely. Every time hearing you speak right now, I've been remembering the Disney movie Soul. Have you seen it?
I have, yes.
Yeah. For me, I could see clearly that how they captured exactly the living and being joyful and, you know, absorbing life without going to a specific destination, as you said, just enjoying the journey as life is in on its own. So
yes, I would say that's I love that film because it was like, you know, I mean, they put billions behind their soul propaganda, whereas, you know, I put 45 minutes. I like, if Ikigai had, you know, Disney's budget for it would be that it's happening in a different way. Yeah, no, so I think this is brilliant that corporations are now trying to reconnect people with their soul, or give them the subconscious propaganda, because that's what they're doing, guys. that program is that is a corporation, you know, creating a transcendent experience and you paying for it. But on the positive, it's actually that one's actually reconnecting you with your soul or the story of soul. So one would argue that's a net positive as making money, making a difference, because I've heard several times now that film has had a powerful connection with people, and it's wonderful to think our really young people are watching that film and having that, you know, kind of, I think we have things like Tom and Jerry where the cats and, you know, was fighting and everything was about, you know, winner takes all, you know, and Roadrunner. Now our kids get to have journeys of the soul in the wonders of Disney and Pixar and things like that. So the world is moving in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. All in all, they did a great job. Congrats, Disney. Yeah, but we'll cut that part, absolutely. I'm not saying that on YouTube.
I'm always live.
Yeah. But have you got any extra content, books, podcasts that we can suggest to our applicants? Because I don't know if you we have explained clearly. We have a yearly cohort that's a fellowship program, the Yunus Youth fellowship program, global fellowship program, because we have a LATAM too from Latin America. And we have a huge selection process because we have thousands of applicants of social entrepreneurs that want to have mentorship and develop their leadership skills. But as we are saying here, we do not only want to focus on that, because they're whole people, you know, they are not only social entrepreneurs, they also have a life, and they deserve to have dignity, and also to, you know, if we can suggest them, and if we can at least show how joyful it can be, how lighter it can be, then we are doing our job, you know, then we're doing our part. So that's why I ask, because we are having this Ikigai webinar for the selection process. So the whole selection process will also be informative, you know, so you don't just fill in a form and thanks. If you're approved, great. If you're not, see you next time. So we're trying
at least been through some a personal existential crisis in the past.
Oh my God!
Thank you.
Oh my God! Oh,
Thank you. My whole lifetime I have no cohort to do this with.
No, yeah. So, yeah, in a way, at least they're learning something. They're yeah. Sometimes it's good to have a little crisis here and there, you know.
Totally. I wouldn't be who I was without my collection, so don't worry.
Yeah. Exactly. So that's why I asked about this extra content or books or podcasts.
Yeah, I mean, just my personal website, marcwinn.com.
Yeah.
And then that usually links to whatever. That links to the blog, which is hundreds of things that I've posted over the years, and the podcast. There will be other things coming out over the years, but most importantly, there's a link to my diary that I make available for coffee whenever I can. You never need permission to hang out, because I've always made my time free at the point of use whenever I can. So if my stuff is online from years of blogging, but more importantly, if you get a moment of inspiration that I must speak to this strange man and I kind of haunt your dreams, then my diary is always available for anybody that can, for as long as it is open. But usually it's quite an intuitive hit, and I find rather than content production and all that kind of stuff, just an hour with someone can create magic for them and for the world and for me as well. So
yeah, perfect. We all obviously checked your website, so we know there's a lot of content. So thank you again for I didn't know about the diary. Actually, I'm curious about how brave you are just to really make yourself out there, you know, to be available in the internet.
Well, I mean, there's a story to that. It's like, why would I get in the way of the universe? You know, I live in an island. It's pretty safe. So, you know, yeah. So, I mean, I think I've done this thousands of times, and it's like, yeah. I mean, it's like allows synchronicity to exist. Is we spend too much time making decisions when decisions don't really deliver anything. So, synchronicity is incredible. So, I leave my diary open, and life is I always have the perfect conversation at the perfect time, like this. It's been amazing for me as well, and it's right what I needed in this moment right now, because I don't get in the way by choosing what I do. And just allowing life to occur, which for the achievement people is it's going with the river, right? And I get, as long as you can do it in a safe way, you live in a safe place. I mean, I do it in London sometimes, and you know, I'm in a heavily public place in a cafe I know well, and things like that. And I've only ever felt in thousands of times doing it uncomfortable once. And in the Zoom world, it doesn't really matter. So it's been an interesting experiment to open source one's diary for ages, and people are really respectful of it and value it, and people don't just grab. You know, I'm always surprised that people don't use it more, to be honest, because people think, no, it feels weird that I don't have to pay or I don't have to do anything, and it's just there and it's open, and it's like people can spend like a year looking at the link. And it's like, that's just humans are strange.
Yeah, we are psychology students, so yeah, absolutely agree with that.
So it's there available for anyone to use it, but thankfully it comes in just the right amount that feels doesn't feel overwhelming, because I'm not out there chasing fame in the traditional way or doing anything. everything is in balance to the right level of connection that works for me, and I constrain the number of hours. That means it's not too overwhelming, and just focus on the right balance of connection and space, and it works well. But the important thing is I'm never having to persuade anyone, because everyone who wants to chat is ready for a conversation and ready for something, because they wouldn't have pressed otherwise. So I'm not ever having to try and get somewhere and deal with all of that resistance. I'm just allowing every horse is ready to drink if you open source your diary, right? That's whereas trying to lead horses to water and make them drink is an exhausting process. And so for me, I get enough flow of interesting conversations to keep me occupied in my old age. So.
Marc, thank you so much for your time and for this amazing conversation. I think we have a lot of insights and a lot of thoughts from here. So I'm super, super excited to share some parts of this conversation with the applicants